My name is George Nenni. I'm Vice President of Operations for Dominion Dealer Solutions. We've been really happy at this show to get some recognition on some new products and work that we've been doing on the product side under Dominion. I think for a lot of people, dealers I've interacted with here, one of their first questions is, Dominion sounds familiar, and what is it again? And so I think the easiest way to think of it is, Dominion, previously, before we branded ourselves in that way, we were auto-based, dealer specialties, dealer skins, ABV, auto revenue, a number of other brands under there. And so the dealer specialties name continues to live on as an independent operation doing what they're doing. They're still part of Dominion, but when we talk about software tools that came in the categories of CRM, inventory management, websites, that's Dominion. So there's other brands, you'll see them kind of phase out over time. Not really in a rush to do that, but just to kind of eliminate the confusion for dealers when they think about an integrated offering, with all those tools together. That's Dominion Dealer Solutions. And so I'm here to present merchandising inventory online and on the lot. I have a lot of passion about inventory merchandising. Been in that space for a lot of years. I started in 1993 with Dealer Specialties. Back then it was a family-owned business. A couple older brothers of mine started that company in '89, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to join them in '93. If any of you were in the business in the mid-'90s, late '90s, it was a really interesting time to kind of watch the internet's popularity boom. All these companies kind of pop into the space. Talk of there won't be dealers someday. Everybody's going to buy cars over the internet. Getting inventory online became really important to dealers. For us, it was a tough conversation in those days. I remember having to really work hard to convince a dealer that it wasn't just 14-year-old kids on the internet, that there was real car buyers potentially on there, and that it was important to them to get their inventory online and maybe one single 320 by 240 photo, and larger photos and multiple photos. So it's been a really fun run. Really reinventing that business from a window sticker company into a data collection, photo collection, inventory management business. We were acquired by Dominion in December of '99, and been with the company ever since. It's a great organization, and if you want to find out more, there's plenty of opportunity to do that. For those that are following on Twitter, there's my Twitter handle, there's Dominion's Twitter handle. And there's a couple different hashtags out there. AutoCon 2012, there's also AutoCon just floating out there if you're following the play-by-play on Twitter. All right, so what I'm going to do in today's presentation, I'm going to define vehicle merchandising, talk about why it's important, go over some best online practices, and then also talk a little bit about on-the-lot merchandising. I think that in a lot of cases we talk a lot about what we're doing online with merchandising, but not necessarily always kind of go back to some of the basics about what we should do on the lot and how we can tie in the online piece. So what is merchandising? I'm not going to read this. This is a Merriam-Webster dictionary. When I think of merchandising, I know you guys may be the same way. I think of retailers, shelf space, presenting products for sale, making displays look nice. Making them very presentable and trying to measure what you're doing and then increase your effectiveness through the presentation of the products better. I think when it comes to inventory merchandising, this is my definition. So acquiring vehicles, preparing them for sale, getting them organized online, and then presenting them on one, hopefully multiple websites for sale and also on your lot. So this kind of goes without saying. So why is inventory merchandising important? Well, the fact is consumers have choices, of course. They're looking at your vehicles right alongside of other vehicles. And I'll talk a little bit about pricing. There's been a lot of attention in the market over the last several years with companies like AAX and vAuto and First Look and our offering as well in terms of pricing your inventory. And that's the most important thing to do in order to kind of win the click and get the sale. And it is very important, but I would argue that, and Jim Ziegler talked about this I think a little bit yesterday, is that you don't have to give up gross if you do the right value building in the vehicle, and if you present the vehicle as a unique vehicle, especially on the used side, But nonetheless, consumers have choices. They're going to see your vehicles if you present yourself better, with better photos, better content, more relative to the vehicle, and more relevant to the audience. You can have a lot more success. So here's a list. I talked about winning the click, driving VDPs, driving leads, showroom traffic, driving sales. It's all about how you can tweak these variables and get results. And I think it's really important also, and I'll talk about this, so I might skip around, but the key is also measuring. I'm going to show you some interesting stats later in the presentation based on some of the studies that we've done internally and based on some data that the good folks at Cars.com were able to share with me about effectiveness of merchandising. Because I think for a dealer, the question becomes, do I want to move from 6 photos to 12 photos to 24 photos? Well, maybe, but where's the sweet spot? Where will I get the most results for the investment I'll make? All things being equal, if I go from 12 photos to 24 photos, how will my results change? How will my clicks change? How will my leads change? And even if you're integrated with your inventory tool or your website tool all the way through to your CRM, you should be able to answer questions like, how do these things affect showroom traffic, test drives, ultimately sales? I would put those challenges to your inventory management company. And honestly, I probably would try to get if you're using different companies for website, CRM, or inventory, get them all on the table together and say, look, folks, I want to be able to have a complete picture of this funnel. I want to see people coming in the funnel. I want to know what keywords are coming in on. I want to see what the experience looks like through the website. I want to see how often I'm winning to click on my portals to the AutoTrader.com and Cars.com folks. And when they come into the store, I want to know how that converts to showroom traffic and ultimately to sales. I think you've got to get those folks together to get those data integrations to happen so that either owners or GMs or internet managers can really look at it and have real dashboards and help them make advertising decisions. Because I think once you get it down to that, you're able to say, perfect, let's spend more money here, how about a little less here, not quite as effective. AutoTrader, why aren't I converting better on your pages? What do I need to do? Merchandising or pricing, get those to convert better, and it all becomes just kind of turning dials and the science of it. And that's the beauty of the online world, is that it's all measurable. The key is just getting that integration. If you use all-in-one systems, we offer one. Vin Solutions been in that business, dealer.com. It should be easier to have that conversation, but again, you want to look at that entire picture, I think, on one dashboard. So here's some examples of some poor photos. Hopefully these show up. Some of them look kind of dark. There's lots of examples of poor photos. I don't mean to pick on any dealers, but knowledge and execution, knowing what to do, and then executing right, and then holding your folks accountable, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you use a third party, can hopefully take you to something better. Something sharp, a lot of contrast, good dealer branding, dropping out backgrounds or staging vehicles. We'll talk about all those different techniques. I gave this presentation, a version of this presentation, at Brian's Automotive Boot Camp. I was coached, but I geeked out a little bit on photos. So if I start to do that, raise your hand. I really have a lot of passion about photos because I think that that's just a lot of it. Photos and now videos. Having great photos starts with having a great camera. And this is my opinion. I just don't think point-and-click cameras or iPhones can even compare to the quality of a digital SLR camera, and I'll explain why. I urge you to find a provider that uses SLR cameras or buy one yourself if you're taking your own photos. They're not that much more expensive, and in many cases what you're paying for is the lens. So a camera lens, the job of a camera lens is to reproduce the human eye, right? And that's a pretty tall order. And so very expensive camera lenses typically are made in Japan or in Germany. They have expensive glass, expensive grindings. They cost a lot of money. They cost far more than the camera. I know because I own a number of lenses that don't look like much, but they're really expensive. And they really allow you to have that really sharp pop on the photo that you may see a competitor's photo or other imagery. Say, wow, what is that? Why are my photos not that sharp? And I would argue you've got to start with a great camera. The other thing is having really good image control. And so image control is like this thing called the f-stop and exposure. And in most cases, you can set those on kind of auto settings, but as you get better at taking pictures, or if you're using outside service, they can tweak those so that you're not using flash if you don't need to. If you're taking an interior shot of a dash, a flash is really distracting. It bounces off the dash and makes the photo look very unnatural. There's no substitute for the natural sunlight, so taking photos outdoors is ideal. If you're in northern climates, that becomes kind of tough, and so bringing them indoors or in studios is sometimes necessary. But having control over those allows you to really take good quality photos. I joke that, some of the toughest photos for me to take, I've got a 12-year-old who loves to play basketball. He's short like me, so he doesn't have much of a future like me, but he does pretty well. And high speed indoor in a dark gym is a really tough shot to take because you don't have a lot of light. And so if you're outdoor, you're taking a picture of a car, it's the best scenario because the car's not moving. There's no action at all. You might use a tripod. Likely you can just stay steady yourself. Elbows in, so you're not out here where you're going to be a lot more shaky. And again, since the thing's not moving, you can kind of adjust your camera so you get a nice sharp photo with good depth and good sharpness. So we played around with a lot of different settings over the years. Wide-angle lenses are a definite upgrade for your camera. Again, if you get the SLR camera, you can interchange the lenses. And when cameras become outdated, you keep all your lenses and you just buy a new camera body. It makes it a very inexpensive upgrade. You get to keep all your investment in your lenses. But the wide-angle lens allows you to get really close to that subject to really capture a lot of outside area without having to back up too much and capture the vehicle next to you. So that's a great investment. They don't cost much money at all. And then a polarizing filter. We're probably all familiar with polarized sunglasses. They're nice because they cut the glare. And a polarizing filter on a camera doesn't darken it, like a sunglass would, but instead, you're looking at a vehicle and you see kind of like that star on the front fender on a shiny day. You know what I'm talking about? So the polarizing lens allows you to just dial that right out. So that just goes away. And in addition, like glare on windshields and windows, it also just dials it right out. They appear clear, so you can see almost through the car. You can see into the car. Just creates a really nice effect, no distractions. And so that's another great investment. Anybody using SLR cameras? Anybody, agreements, disagreements with that recommendation?
Oh, you absolutely have to. If you try to roll through that, go there.
Do you use auto settings, or are you?
Yeah, my guys use auto settings.
Do that?
And they try to eliminate, like I said, as much of the flash inside as possible. But there's limitation of surrounding light and studio inside. So.
Yeah, I use a lot of auto settings. I find that I'll tweak it every once in a while, but generally the brain and the camera makes pretty good recommendations. Questions on that? All right. How many photos? So I'm going to show you some stats based on our dealer specialties database. We took a snapshot of the database before I came here to look at all the vehicles that we have and the number of photos for every vehicle that we have, and kind of show that on a big chart. What do you think the average is? Any guesses on the average number of photos the dealers out there, and we generally service franchise dealers, the dealers are out there taking on each of their cars? 20, 24?
6.
6, 12? 12. 12 is going to end up being very close to the number. It's going to be 13. But you'll see, when you look at this graph that I show you, it can be pretty telling as far as there's dealers taking a ton, and there's dealers, unfortunately, that are still taking 4 or less. When you talk about how many photos you should take, I think the first thing you need is a strategy. It could be a dealership strategy. You could say, look, here's how I want my vehicles to be presented. I think a great best practice on your search results page is all the vehicles are facing one direction. Typically that's the front fender, driver's side front fender. So they're all facing and look very nice going down the search results page. I think a lot of dealers do that. But more so, I think you want to look at, what do I want to capture? How many photos am I taking? And either I'm going to tell my own photographer, or I'm going to tell a third-party photographer, here's what I want. I want these shots, this many outside shots, this many interior shots. I always want the engine. I sometimes want the engine. If you're selling unique vehicles, you may step that up. You may give them special instructions for certain vehicles that you want a lot of pictures of. Any eBay sellers? Anybody selling cars on eBay? I went up and did some harvesting the last 2 nights to give you some examples from eBay. There's a lot of photos on eBay. The average eBay seller, I would guess based on what I see, is in the 20s and the mid-20s. because you got a remote buyer. You got a remote buyer who may not be able to visually inspect it. So it may depend on the make model. Excuse me, so there it is. The average is 13. And what they tell us, our database folks tell us that goes up on one photo a year, or it has the last several years pretty regularly. And that's a good thing. So dealers are continually taking more photos and seeing that adds value. And the Cars.com study may even convince some of you to take more. Grab 2 cups. Last 2 or 3 times I came in there to get coffee, there's no coffee, so I had to Jones for some coffee. All right, remote purchases, we talked about that. So here is a graph, and hopefully this makes sense to y'all. If you look at the y-axis up there, that's the number of vehicles in the database, and then along the bottom is the number of photos. So you can see these big spikes. There's a big spike there at 8 photos. And it kind of trails off out to the right. What you're not seeing there, all the way out to 71, there's a very long tail there. And you can't see it because of the scale of the graph. But I tried to show the rest of that data. That's why if you look at this, you'd say, really, George, the average is 13? That doesn't make sense. It looks like the average would be 8. But there's a tremendous amount of cars that kind of trail out there where we've got a lot of dealers that are taking a lot more images for their needs. The reason that we have spikes there is because they package it. There's like an 8-photo package and a 12-photo package. That's why you have those. Is that surprising? Is it?
There seems to be like a rather odd, like a mini spike at 39. What's going on there?
Must be an individual deal. I don't know. That 39 does seem like a strange number. You got any 39? This is Glenn Gardner back here. He runs Dealer Specialties and has for a number of years for us. And so I may pick him if he.
What's the eBay?
It might be a decent number of cars. I mean, that's what, 2,000 vehicles? Or I'm sorry, 5,000 vehicles?
Yeah, I've seen some services, they have a limit at 39, and then that's probably why you're seeing a spike there, since people are posting up to the limit.
Posting up to a max. There might be a set limitation on something, but that number might actually be 40, George, looking at your graph, because you got a spike there between 0 and 1, too. Right? So everything might be a little bit skewed to the right. So that might actually be 40, which would be a more common number to say, hey, 40 pictures might be easy.
Do you think it would be an even number? All right. May remain a mystery. Okay, so what should be captured? This is kind of a general guideline, maybe. I mean, one place to start is, the exterior has 4 sides and 4 corners. Probably a logical place to start. In terms of exterior, a lot of dealers will take a lot more than that. Opening a door, trunk, hood, quality of seats, dash. When I buy cars, and I've only bought new cars for my wife. I've never bought a new car for myself. But quality of seats is really important to me. Quality of interior, So I wish they had kind of smell-o-vision so I could see if it were a stinky car or not. But I want to see is the seats all smashed down, is the leather kind of cracked. What's it look like? Am I going to feel comfortable trouncing around in this car or not? And so I think getting nice, sharp interior shots makes a big difference. Dash shots can be gathered very quickly from the back seat. I think in most cases, hop in the back seat and take a couple shots of the dash. And again, I'm going to talk about kind of a recurring theme. Years ago, hopefully, salespeople were still taught to do walkarounds on new vehicles, maybe on used vehicles, and building value in the vehicle, and especially on used vehicles because no 2 used vehicles are alike. And so what I think you really want to do is you want to look at this vehicle and say, what makes this unique? Is nav not standard on this vehicle, and this was an expensive option that they chose, cold weather package? What do I want to highlight about this vehicle that will help build value? So if someone's seeing that online, and it may be priced a little bit higher than somebody else, if they're able to make that comparison, they're able to understand. And when we talk about seller's notes, it's key to get those key options early in your seller's notes so that they show up on your search results page. If you're looking at your listings in Cars or Auto Trader, you want to make sure that those key options, nav or premium wheels, whatever it is that require this car to cost a little bit more, are early in there because they only take the first handful of characters on the search results page.